The private terminal at the airport was always quiet, but it was a noisy kind of quiet. It was the sound of money being whispered. The air smelled like expensive leather and fresh coffee. Sharp contrast to the smell of jet fuel and sweat that hung in the air just a few hundred yards away at the commercial gates. Here, the floors were polished marble, and the windows were huge sheets of glass that looked out onto the tarmac where gleaming white jets sat like sleeping giants. Arthur stood behind the mahogany counter, smoothing the front of his dark blue suit. He checked his reflection in the glass of the display case. He looked good. He looked the part. In his line of work, looking the part was half the battle. He sold time to people who didn't have enough of it, and he sold comfort to people who had too much stress. It was a good job, but days like today were slow. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. It was past 2 in the afternoon, and he hadn't made a single solid call. He needed a sale. He needed to talk to someone who didn't ask about the price, tag before they asked about the legroom. He tapped his pen on the counter, a nervous habit. The showroom was empty. The other sales reps were in the back, probably laughing about something or eating lunch, leaving Arthur to hold down the fort. He sighed, picking up a brochure to straighten it, even though it was already perfectly straight. That was when the heavy glass doors at the entrance slid open. Arthur didn't look up at first. He expected a pilot, or maybe a wealthy businessman coming in to complain about a delay. But the footsteps that echoed on the marble floor weren't the sharp click of dress shoes. They were a heavy scuffing sound. Arthur looked up. He felt his eyebrows twitch together before he could stop them. Walking through the door was a man who looked like he had just come from a construction site. He was a tall, broad-shouldered black man, wearing a gray hoodie that had seen better days. The fabric was faded, and there was a small stain near the pocket. He wore loose-fitting jeans that were frayed at the hems and heavy work boots that were covered in a layer of dried mud. He didn't have a briefcase. He didn't have a sleek leather bag. He just held a folded piece of white paper in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. Arthur straightened his posture. He put on his customer service face, the one that was polite but firm. He assumed this man had taken a wrong turn. Maybe he was looking for the commercial terminal. Or maybe he was a driver waiting for a passenger who was arriving in a Gulfstream. It happened sometimes. Drivers would wander in to use the restroom or ask for directions. "Good afternoon," Arthur said, his voice carrying just enough volume to be heard across the room. "Can I help you with something?" The man didn't smile. He didn't look around the room at the expensive chairs or the model airplanes hanging from the ceiling. He walked straight to the counter. He moved with a slow, deliberate pace, like he wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere. When he reached the counter, he didn't lean on it. He stood tall, looking down at Arthur. "I hope so," the man said. His voice was deep, calm, and rough around the edges. "I'm looking to buy a jet." Arthur let out a short, sharp laugh before he could catch himself. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a puff of air through his nose. He quickly covered his mouth and coughed, trying to turn the laugh into something else. He looked the man up and down, taking in the mud on the boots and the worn-out hoodie. "Right," Arthur said, nodding slowly. "A jet. Well, you've certainly come to the right place for that. But, this is the private aviation center. We deal with charter sales and acquisitions. It's a very specific market." "I know where I am," the man said simply. He didn't seem offended by Arthur's reaction, which made Arthur feel even more uncomfortable. If the man had gotten angry, Arthur could have handled that. But the man just stood there, completely still. "Okay," Arthur said, deciding to handle this as quickly as possible. He needed to get this guy out of here before a real client walked in. Well, buying an aircraft is a lengthy process. It involves financing, insurance, background checks, and significant deposits. Most people start by looking at our entry-level fractional ownership programs. That's usually the best way to get your foot in the door. The man unfolded the piece of paper he was holding. It looked like it had been torn out of a notebook. He smoothed it out on the counter. "I'm not looking for a piece of ownership," he said. "I need a whole plane. I need something that can fly non-stop for at least 10 hours. I need to carry about 15 passengers." Arthur looked at the paper. It was a handwritten list. Nothing else. No letterhead from a bank. No logo from a corporation. just scribbled notes. He felt a headache starting to form behind his eyes. This was a prank. It had to be a prank. Or maybe this guy was mentally unwell. "Sir," Arthur said, dropping the polite tone slightly. He wanted to be authoritative now. "Sir, aircraft like that, the heavy jets, the Globals, and the Gulfstreams, those, cost $40, $50 million. And that's before you fuel them, crew them, and hangar them. You can't just walk in here off the street with a handwritten list." "I have cash," the man said. He said it so casually, like he was saying he had enough change for a soda. Arthur stared at him. "Cash? You have $40 million in." "Cash." "Not on me," the man said, his face still expressionless. "But I can access it. Today." Arthur couldn't help it. He laughed again. This time, he didn't try to hide it. He looked around the showroom, half expecting to see a camera crew pop out from behind a potted plant. He looked back at the man, shaking his head. "Look, buddy," Arthur said, using a tone that usually sent people running. "I don't know who put you up to this, or what kind of joke you're trying to pull, but I'm very busy. I have clients to call. Real clients. This isn't a place for daydreaming. If you're looking for a flight simulator ride, they have those at the museum downtown." The man didn't move. He didn't blink. He just watched Arthur with eyes that were surprisingly alert. They were dark eyes, tired eyes, but they missed nothing. "I'm not joking," the man said quietly. "I sold my business last week. I need to get back and forth to the oil fields in Nigeria and the refineries in Texas. Commercial flights are wasting my time. I need to buy a plane today. I was told you were the man to talk to." Arthur stopped laughing. He leaned back, crossing his arms. He studied the man's face. Was this guy crazy? Or was he a really good con artist? But usually con artists wore suits. They looked smooth. They tried to impress you. This man looked like he just wanted a sandwich and a nap. "Oh, who told you I was the man to talk to?" Arthur asked suspiciously. "A friend," the man said. "Someone who knows you sell good machines." Arthur felt a flash of irritation. He worked hard for his commissions. He didn't have time to entertain street performers or delusional dreamers. He needed to protect his territory. He decided to try one last tactic to humiliate the man into leaving. "Okay," Arthur said, his voice sugary sweet again. "Okay, I hear you. You're a serious buyer. You want a heavy jet? Let me show you what we have." Arthur pulled a glossy, expensive brochure out from under the counter. It was filled with photos of plush interiors and gold-plated faucets. He flipped it open to a page featuring a sleek, mid-sized jet. "This is the best option for someone in your situation," Arthur said, pointing to the picture. "It's a pre-owned model. Very reliable. It's a steal at only $4 million. That's practically the price of a nice house, right? Very affordable." He watched the man's face, waiting for him to flinch at the price. $4 million was a life-changing amount of money for most people on Earth. It was a number that usually made people sweat or stammer. The man looked at the picture. He looked at the range stats. He shook his head slowly. "It's too small," the man said, "and the range is too short. I told you. I need to cross the ocean. I can't stop for gas." "Sir," Arthur said, his patience snapping completely. "You walked in here with mud on your boots and a hoodie you probably slept in. You are holding a handwritten list on a torn piece of paper. You think I'm going to believe you can afford a Gulfstream G650? Do you have any idea how much that costs?" "I know the price," the man said. "Do you have one in stock? Or do I need to go to the next airport?" Arthur slammed his hand on the counter. The noise echoed through the quiet terminal. "Get out," Arthur said. He didn't care if he was being rude anymore. He was angry. "Get out of here. Go play your games somewhere else. You're insulting my intelligence. You're wasting my time. Leave before I call security." The man stared at Arthur for a long moment. The silence stretched out between them, thick and heavy. The man didn't look angry. He looked almost disappointed. He looked at Arthur the way a teacher looks at a student who just failed. A test they studied for. "You're making a mistake," the man said. Softly, "The only mistake I made was opening. The door for you? Arthur snapped. He pointed a finger toward the glass exit doors. Go, the man sighed. It was a deep, heavy sound that seemed to come from the bottom of his chest. He reached into the pocket of his dirty jeans. Arthur flinched, wondering if the guy had a knife. But the man just pulled out a cheap flip phone. It was an old model, scratched and battered. He flipped it open, pressed a few buttons, and held it up to his ear. I'm at the desk, the man said into the phone. The salesman says he doesn't want to sell to me. Arthur rolled his eyes. He picked up his own phone, pretending to dial security, just to show the man he wasn't bluffing. He watched the man with a mix of pity and disgust. It was sad, really. Someone this desperate for attention, dressing up like a homeless man just to get a reaction out of people? Yes, the man said into the phone. Hold on. He looked at Arthur. He didn't hand the phone to Arthur, but he held it out slightly. He wants to talk to you, the man said. Arthur looked at the cheap plastic phone. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Who? Your social worker. Your parole officer? Just take the phone, the man said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Arthur hesitated. He felt a strange chill run down his spine. There was something about the way the man was standing, so still, so sure of himself, that made Arthur's mouth go dry. He slowly reached out and took the scratched, dirty phone. Hello? Arthur said, his voice unsure. Arthur. A voice crackled on the other end. It was a voice Arthur recognized immediately. It was the bank manager, Mr. Sterling, the man who handled the accounts for half the billionaires in the city. Mr. Sterling, Arthur asked, his grip tightening on the cheap phone. Is that you? Yes, the voice said. I have a client with you, Mr. Thomas. He's looking to liquidate some funds for an aircraft purchase. He says you're giving him a hard time. Arthur stood frozen. He looked at the man standing in front of him. The man in the hoodie, with the mud on his boots. Mr. Thomas. The Mr. Thomas? The logistics tycoon who had just sold his shipping empire for hundreds of millions of dollars. The man the papers were calling the new king of industry. Arthur looked down at his own expensive suit. Then he looked at the dirty boots. He felt the floor tilt beneath him. Arthur started to say, but his throat closed up. The world around him seemed to spin, and the quiet room suddenly felt very, very loud. The cheap plastic phone felt heavy in Arthur's hand, like a brick wrapped in sandpaper. His fingers were trembling so badly that he had to grip the device with both hands to keep it from slipping. The voice on the other end was crisp, clear, and terrifyingly familiar. It was Mr. Sterling, a man who handled billions of dollars and didn't have time for nonsense. Arthur, are you there? Mr. Sterling asked. The tone wasn't angry, but it was sharp. It was the tone of a man who expected immediate results. Yes, sir. I'm here, Arthur croaked. His voice sounded weak, thin, and completely unlike his own. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the man standing on the other side of the counter. The man in the hoodie? Mr. Thomas? The name bounced around Arthur's skull, but it wouldn't stick. It didn't make sense. This guy looked like he should be asking for spare change, not signing a check for the price of a small island. Mr. Thomas is a valued client of the bank, Mr. Sterling continued. He has been waiting for a week to close this acquisition so he can return to his operations overseas. He tells me you are refusing to assist him? No, not at all, Arthur stammered, sweat prickling on his forehead. There must be a misunderstanding. I was just explaining the inventory. Good, because he has authorized a transfer of funds to your escrow account for immediate verification. The funds are enough to cover a global 7,500 or equivalent, with change left over for fuel and crew for a year. Please treat him with the urgency his business requires. I expect a confirmation email within the hour. The line went dead. Arthur stood there, the dial tone buzzing in his ear. He slowly lowered the phone. The silence in the showroom was absolute. The air conditioning hummed, but Arthur felt like he was standing in a furnace. He looked at the man. The man hadn't moved. He was just standing there, his hands at his sides, waiting. He didn't look smug. He didn't look like he won a victory. He just looked like a man who wanted to buy a plane. Arthur placed the flip phone gently on the polished mahogany counter, treating the cheap piece of plastic like it was a holy relic. He cleared his throat, trying to find some moisture in his mouth. "Mr. Thomas," Arthur whispered, then coughed to make his voice stronger. "Mr. Thomas. I apologize. That was Mr. Sterling from the bank," I heard the man said simply. I didn't realize Arthur started, his brain scrambling for a way out of the hole he had dug. "You see, we get a lot of people in here. Tourists, dreamers, people playing games. I have to be careful. I have to protect the assets. I was just doing my due diligence." The man didn't respond to the excuse. He just reached forward and picked up his folded piece of paper. He refolded it, the creases sharp. "I don't care about your excuses, Arthur. I care about the plane. Do you have what I need, or do I need to drive to the next airport?" Yes, absolutely," Arthur said. He came out from behind the counter so fast, he nearly tripped over his own feet. "We have exactly what you need. Please, come this way. I have a quiet room where we can sit. We can view the specs on the big screen. Can I get you some water? Coffee? A sandwich?" The man ignored the offer of food. He walked toward the glass doors that led to the tarmac. "Show me the plane first. I don't need to see pictures on a screen. I want to see the metal." Arthur scrambled to catch up, his heart hammering against his ribs. He grabbed a set of keys from a hook near the door. "Right. Of course. We have a Gulfstream G650ER on the lot. It's pre-owned, but certified. It has the range you asked for. It can go from here to Dubai without stopping." "Lead the way," the man said. They walked out onto the tarmac. The afternoon sun was bright, reflecting off the white paint of the jets. The heat hit Arthur immediately, but the man didn't seem to notice. He walked with a long, purposeful stride, his heavy boots crunching on the asphalt. Arthur's mind was racing. He had messed up. He had messed up spectacularly. This was the kind of client who could buy the entire hangar. This was a man who could make or break Arthur's career with a single phone call. He had to fix this. He had to turn the ship around. He needed to show this man that he was a professional, that he knew everything there was to know about aviation. "Mr. Thomas, if you don't mind me asking," Arthur said, trying to keep up with the man's pace. "You mentioned you sold your business. Logistics, right? That must be incredibly demanding." "It is," the man said, not looking back. "I started with one truck. 30 years ago. I drove it myself. I fixed the tires. I loaded the boxes. I slept in the cab." Arthur nodded vigorously. "Incredible. Self-made. That's amazing. But surely, now that you've sold, you're looking to enjoy the retirement life? A nice lighter jet for hops to the Bahamas. The G650 is wonderful, but it's a lot of plane for just pleasure." The man stopped walking. He turned to face Arthur. They were standing right next to the massive aircraft. It loomed over them, a sleek silver bird. The man put his hand on the fuselage, his fingers tracing the metal skin. He touched the plane like a farmer checking the hide of a horse. "You think I'm retiring?" the man asked. "Well?" Arthur shrugged, smiling a tight, nervous smile. "Most people sell to relax. That's what the luxury lifestyle is about, right? Leisure." The man shook his head. "I didn't sell my company to relax, Arthur. I sold it because the work was done. I built a system that moves freight across 3 continents. I built a network that keeps food on tables and oil in the machines. I'm retiring from the management, yes, but I'm not retiring from the work. I have foundation projects in Africa. I have schools to build in the Delta. I don't have time to relax. I have too much to do." Arthur stood there, his mouth slightly open. He looked at the mud on the man's boots. Suddenly, it didn't look like dirt from a construction site. It looked like evidence. It looked like history. This man wasn't a tourist. He was a builder, right, Arthur said, his voice dropping, the fake salesman cheer. "I understand. You need a tool, not a toy." "Exactly," the man said. He turned his attention back to the jet. "Open it up." Arthur unlocked the cabin door and lowered the stairs. He held out his arm, gesturing for the man to go first. "After you," the man climbed the stairs, He didn't pause to admire the plush carpeting or the hand-stitched leather seats like most clients did. He walked straight to the cockpit. He looked at the avionics panel, his eyes scanning the dials and screens. "I can fly this myself," the man said. "I still have my license, but I'll need a crew for the long hauls. Can you handle the staffing?" "Yes, absolutely," Arthur said from the doorway. "We have a full-service dispatch. We can have a captain and first officer ready within 24 hours. The man came back out of the cockpit and walked into the main cabin. He sat down in one of the captain's chairs. It was huge, buttery soft, and electric. He leaned back, testing the cushion. He frowned. "It's too soft," he said. Arthur panicked. "Too soft? But these are the Italian leather seats, sir. The most expensive on the market?" "I don't care about the price," the man snapped, though his voice wasn't loud, just firm. "I'm going to be sitting in this chair for 14 hours at a time. If I sink into it, my back will seize up. I need support. I need a chair that feels like a seat in a heavy machinery cab, not a marshmallow." Arthur frantically tapped on his tablet. "We can swap the seats. We can have new upholstery done. Industrial grade, orthopedic, whatever you want. Money is no object." The man looked at Arthur. "Money is always an object, Arthur. That's why you respect it. You treat it like water, wasting it on soft chairs and shiny lights. I treat it like fuel. You burn it to move forward." Arthur felt the words hit him in the chest. He looked down at his tablet, at the list of unnecessary amenities he usually tried to upsell. The champagne fridge, the gold accents. This man didn't care about any of that. He wanted efficiency. He wanted function. Arthur had been trying to sell him a lifestyle, but the man just wanted a vehicle. "Change the seats," the man said, standing up. "And check the engines. I want the maintenance logs on my desk by tomorrow morning. If there's a single scratch on the turbine blades, I walk away." "I'll have the lead mechanic pull the logs personally," Arthur promised. "Mr. Thomas, about the payment." "We can go back inside now," the man said. He walked past Arthur and down the stairs. They walked back to the showroom in silence. Arthur's mind was reeling. He was terrified of losing the deal, but he was also strangely invigorated. This was real. This was a real challenge. This wasn't some rich kid trying to impress his friends. This was a man who knew what he wanted. When they got back inside, Arthur led the man to the small conference room. He poured a glass of water, no ice, just cool, and placed it on the table. He sat down opposite the man, his notebook open. "The bank mentioned a transfer," Arthur said, trying to keep his hands steady. "I can prepare the bill of sale today." The man nodded. "I'll have my lawyer look at the contract in the morning. But I want you to do something for me first." "Anything," Arthur said. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled business card. It was simple. Just a name and a number. No fancy logo. No gold lettering. He slid it across the table. "There is a company," the man said. "A charter service 3 airports south of here. They fly older planes, Cessnas. They serve the remote communities. The pilots are former military, mostly. They do good work, but they're struggling with fuel costs. Their runway needs paving." Arthur looked at the card, confused. "Sir, I don't understand. You want me to?" "What? Buy them?" "No," the man said. "I want you to charter them for my maintenance runs. When I need parts flown to the sites, I want to use them. Don't use the big jet. Use these guys. Pay them a fair rate. A rate that lets them pave that runway." Arthur blinked. You want me to hire a competitor?" "I want you to help people who are trying to work," the man said, staring right into Arthur's eyes. "That's the difference between you and me, Arthur. You look at a man with dirty boots and see a problem. I see a man who's been walking. You look at a small charter company and see competition. I see the backbone of the industry." Arthur sat back in his chair. The air in the room felt heavy. He looked at the crumpled card, then at the billionaire in the hoodie. Arthur realized he wasn't just selling a plane. He was being tested. He was being given a chance to prove he wasn't just a suit in a shiny room. "Okay," Arthur said softly. I can do that. I'll make the calls myself. The man stood up. Good. Then we have a deal. He held out his hand. It was calloused, rough, and scarred. Arthur took it. The grip was solid, crushing Arthur's fingers, not out of malice, but out of pure, undeniable strength. Have the seats ready by Friday? The man said. I'm flying out on Saturday. He turned and walked toward the door. He didn't look back at the marble floors or the crystal chandeliers. He just walked out into the afternoon sun to finish his business. Arthur sat alone at the table for a long time. He looked at his hands. They were soft, manicured, and clean. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The heavy glass doors slid shut behind the man, sealing him out, but the atmosphere in the showroom remained charged. Like the air right before a thunderstorm, Arthur stood frozen for a moment, his hands still tingling from the crushing grip of the handshake. He looked around the pristine, empty room. The polished marble floors, the abstract modern art on the walls, the subtle scent of vanilla and leather, it all felt different now. It felt fragile. It felt like a stage set rather than a place where real work happened. He walked back to the conference table on shaky legs and sat down. The crumpled business card sat next to his expensive tablet. It was a stark contrast. The card was battered around the edges, the ink slightly faded from being handled so much. It looked like it had survived a war. Arthur picked it up. It was plain white cardstock with simple black text. No glossy finish, no embossed logo. He turned the card over in his fingers. He thought about the man's words. I see a man who's been walking. Arthur looked down at his own shoes. Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine. He had never walked a mile in them for work. He walked from the parking garage to the elevator. He walked from the elevator to the desk. That was the extent of his journey. The computer on the desk chimed, pulling him out of his thoughts. A notification popped up on the screen. Incoming wire transfer. Pending verification. Arthur's heart skipped a beat. He swiped the screen and logged into the banking portal. The numbers that appeared were so long, they didn't seem real. It was a stream of zeros that defied logic. It was more money than Arthur would earn in 10 lifetimes. And it was sitting there, waiting for him to click accept. But he couldn't click yet. His hand hovered over the mouse. He felt a sudden wave of nausea. If he clicked this, the deal was real. If he clicked this, he had to deliver. He had to find those stiff chairs. He had to call the small charter company. He had to stop being a salesman and start being a man of his word. He pushed his chair back and stood up. He needed to get out of the room. He walked toward the back offices, his footsteps echoing too loudly. He passed the break room where the other sales reps were laughing, drinking coffee, talking about their golf games or their dinner reservations. The sound grated on him. It sounded hollow. He pushed open the door to his own small office and closed it, shutting out the noise. He sat at his desk and picked up the phone. He stared at the crumpled card. He needed to make the call the man had asked for. This was the test. He dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times. Then 4. Arthur was just about to hang up when a woman's voice answered. She sounded out of breath. Blue Sky Charters, this is Linda. Sorry I was out on the tarmac trying to tie down a banner that came loose in the wind. How can I help you? Arthur cleared his throat. Hello, is this the office for Blue Sky? Sure is, the woman said. If you're looking to book a scenic flight over the city, we're booked solid until the weekend. If you're looking for a banner tow, we can squeeze you in on Tuesday. No, I'm not looking for a flight, Arthur said. He felt awkward. He felt like an imposter. My name is Arthur. I'm with Elite Aviation at the International Terminal. The silence on the other end of the line was immediate. Oh, the woman said. Her voice changed. It became guarded, defensive. Elite Aviation. The big guys. What do you want? If this is about the zoning dispute for the runway, I told the city council we're trying to fix it. We don't have the money to fight you in court. No, Arthur said quickly. Nothing like that. I had a visitor today. A client. A man named Mr. Thomas. Silence stretched out. "Mr. Thomas?" She whispered. I haven't heard that name in years. Is he all right?" "He's fine," Arthur said. "He bought a jet from us. A large one. But he gave me your card. He said he wanted to use your company for his maintenance runs, for moving parts. He said you had good pilots." Kata heard a sharp intake of breath, then a sound like a chair scraping across a floor. "He said that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He remembers us?" "He seems to remember everything," Arthur said. "He wants me to hire you. He said to pay a fair rate. A rate that lets you pave the runway." There was a long pause. Arthur could hear the sound of a plane engine starting in the background, a low rumble. It wasn't the quiet hum of a private jet. It was the rough cough of a propeller engine. "Why?" Linda asked. "Why would he do that? Why go through you?" "Because I'm the one who messed up," Arthur said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I looked at him and I saw a problem. He looked at me and he saw an opportunity to fix something. He wants me to fix this, Linda. He wants me to help you." The woman laughed. It was a choked, wet laugh, like she was crying at the same time. "I don't know what to say," she said. "We're barely hanging on. The main runway has potholes you could lose a tire in. We turn away cargo flights every week because I'm scared to land the big planes. But Mr. Thomas? He used to fly out of here when he was starting out. He used to sleep on the bench in the hangar." Arthur looked out his window. He couldn't see the sky from here, just the brick wall of the next building. "I can transfer the deposit today," Arthur said, surprising himself with how confident he sounded. "I have a client who needs parts moved to Nigeria and Texas. Heavy parts. Too big for the small birds, but he wants you to do the logistics. Can you handle it?" "We can handle anything," she said, her voice hardening with pride. "We might look like a junkyard, but we know how to fly," good Arthur said. "I'll send over the manifests." "And Linda? Yeah?" "I'm sorry," Arthur said. "I'm sorry we never looked your way before. I'm sorry we only looked at ourselves." "Thanks, Arthur," she said softly. "I appreciate that." Arthur hung up the phone. He sat there for a minute, letting the silence settle in the room. He felt lighter. The knot in his chest that had been there since the man walked in was loosening. He realized that the man hadn't just given him a sale. He had given him a way out of the trap he had built for himself. The trap of arrogance, of judging people by their cover, of thinking that money was the only thing that mattered. He stood up and walked back out to the showroom. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the floor. The glass doors were tinted, turning the outside world into a golden haze. He walked over to the Gulf Stream he had shown the man. He placed his hand on the cold metal skin. It was a beautiful machine. It represented speed, luxury, and power. But now, looking at it, Arthur didn't see a trophy. He saw a tool. He saw a means to an end. It was a way to get the work done. It was a way to connect people. He pulled his tablet out of his jacket pocket. He opened the email to the upholstery company. He had been about to order the standard platinum luxury package. He deleted the draft. He started a new one. Subject: Seat reconfiguration, order number 8849. He typed quickly, his fingers flying over the glass screen. Cancel the Italian leather upgrade. I need industrial-grade high-density foam. Durable synthetic fabric that can handle grease and dirt. No heating elements. No massage functions. Reinforced lumbar support. I need them installed by Friday morning. Money is not an issue. Speed is. He hit send. Then he opened a new window and searched for the number of the maintenance crew chief. He dialed it, Mike. It's Arthur. I know you're getting ready to clock out, but I need you to pull the logs on the G650ER personally. Every page. Every inspection record. I want to know if a screw has been loose in the last 5 years. And wash the outside. I don't want it to look shiny. I want it to look ready. Arthur, you okay? Mike asked on the other end. You sound different. Fine, Arthur said. I'm just getting ready to send a man home. He ended the call and walked back to his desk. He sat down and looked at the notification on the screen. The wire transfer was still pending. He hovered his finger over the mouse one last time. He thought about the mud on the boots. He thought about the worn hoodie. He thought about the crumpled business card. Arthur clicked accept. The screen flashed green. Transfer complete. The money had moved. The deal was done. But Arthur knew the real work was just beginning. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the door. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he wasn't going back to the apartment, where he sat alone counting his commissions. He needed to walk. He needed to feel the ground under his feet. As he stepped out of the building, the cool evening air hit his face. He looked down the long stretch of runway. In the distance, he saw a small propeller plane taking off, struggling against the wind. It wasn't as fast as the jets. It wasn't as pretty. But it was flying. Arthur smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was flying too. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic activity for Arthur. But the energy in the hangar had changed completely. Usually, preparing a jet for a new owner involved polishing the chrome until it blinded, and stocking the minibar with champagne that cost more than a car. This time, it was different. This time, it was about work. Arthur was out on the tarmac before the sun even came up on Friday. He was wearing a pair of sturdy work boots he had found in the back of his closet, relics from a hiking trip he had taken years ago. He had traded his suit jacket for a thick windbreaker because the morning air was biting. He didn't look like a salesman anymore. He looked like a mechanic. He stood near the open cargo door of the Gulfstream, watching a team of technicians install the new seats. They weren't the plush, soft marshmallows the jet came with. These were heavy-duty frames, covered in a tough charcoal gray fabric that felt like canvas. The foam inside was dense, designed to hold a man upright for 14 hours without turning his back into jelly. "Watch the alignment on that rail," Arthur shouted to one of the young technicians. "Mr. Thomas said he wants to feel the road through the plane. If that seat wobbles, we start over." The technician nodded, wiping grease from his forehead. "Got it, Arthur. These tracks are solid. It's like putting tank seats in a Cadillac, but it's done." Arthur climbed the stairs and walked into the cabin. The smell of new leather was gone, replaced by the scent of industrial adhesive and clean metal. It smelled functional. It smelled serious. He ran his hand over the armrest. It wasn't soft. It was textured, rubberized. It was something you could grip when the turbulence hit. He walked to the cockpit. The avionics team was finishing up the diagnostics. Every screen was green. Every system was optimal. The plane was healthy. It was ready to fly. Arthur pulled his phone out of his pocket. He had a list of names on his screen. It was the contact list for the small charter company. Blue Sky. Over the last 2 days, Arthur had done more than just hire them. He had spent hours on the phone with Linda, the owner. He had arranged for the transfer of the maintenance runs as promised. But he had also done something else. He had used his connections he usually saved for golf outings. To get a quote on paving their runway, it wasn't charity. Mr. Thomas had made it clear he didn't want charity. So Arthur had structured it as a logistics contract. The paving company would rent the land to store their equipment, and in exchange, they would grade and pave the runway. It was a loophole, a bit of creative paperwork, but it was the only way Linda would accept the help. The paperwork was sitting on Arthur's desk, signed and ready to be sent. He looked out the cockpit window. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale orange light over the tarmac. In the distance, he saw a battered pickup truck driving toward the private terminal. It kicked up a cloud of dust behind it. Arthur's heart rate picked up. He knew that truck. He hurried down the stairs and stood on the asphalt as the truck pulled up. It parked near the hangar, and the door creaked open. Mr. Thomas stepped out. He was wearing the same work boots, caked in fresh mud, and a different hoodie, this one a dark navy blue. He looked tired. His eyes were heavy, like he hadn't slept in a week. Arthur walked over to him. He didn't offer his hand. He didn't smile a fake salesman's smile. He just stopped a few feet away and stood tall. "Good morning, sir," Arthur said. "Morning," Mr. Thomas grunted. He looked at the plane, then back at Arthur. "Is she ready?" "She's ready," Arthur said. "The seats are in. The engines are tuned. The logs are on the table. She's fueled up and ready to go. Mr. Thomas nodded. He walked past Arthur toward the stairs. Arthur turned and walked beside him. Sir, before you board, I wanted to show you something. Mr. Thomas stopped and looked at him. If it's about the in-flight entertainment, don't bother. I told you I don't need it. It's not that, Arthur said. He reached into his windbreaker and pulled out a folder. It was a simple manila folder, not a leather portfolio. It's about the support network. Mr. Thomas took the folder. He opened it and flipped through the pages. Arthur watched his face closely. The pages detailed the flight schedules for the smaller planes. They showed the manifests for the parts delivery to the oil fields. They showed the contracts with Blue Sky Charters. And on the last page, there was a copy of the paving agreement for the runway, highlighted in yellow. Mr. Thomas read slowly. He didn't say a word. The silence stretched out, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling around the tail of the jet. Finally, he closed the folder. He looked up at Arthur. His expression was unreadable, but the corners of his eyes seemed to soften just a fraction. You paved the runway, Mr. Thomas said. It wasn't a question. Structurally necessary, Arthur said, repeating the excuse Linda had given him. For the safety of the cargo transport, Mr. Thomas let out a short breath. It might have been a laugh. He looked down at the folder, then back at Arthur. He studied the younger man's face. He saw the dirt under Arthur's fingernails from checking the cargo hold. He saw the lack of polish on his boots. He saw that Arthur hadn't shaved in 2 days. You did good, Arthur, Mr. Thomas said. His voice was low, but it carried weight. This is organization. This is logistics. This is how you build a bridge. Thank you, sir, Arthur said. I also authorized the crew scheduling. They're on standby. You can leave whenever you want. Mr. Thomas handed the folder back. Keep it. You manage it. I trust you. Arthur took the folder, stunned. You trust me? I bought a plane from you, Mr. Thomas said. That means I trust you with my life when I'm in the air. Why wouldn't I trust you with the ground operations? Arthur felt a lump form in his throat. He swallowed it hard. I won't let you down. I know, Mr. Thomas said. He turned and walked up the stairs. He paused at the top just before entering the cabin. He looked out over the airfield toward the distant horizon where the sky was turning bright blue. You know, Arthur, he said, his voice drifting down. 10 years ago, I stood on a runway just like this one. I was watching my first plane take off. It was a rusted bucket of bolts. I was terrified it was going to fall apart in the sky, but it didn't. It flew, and I realized something. It doesn't matter if the paint is chipped. It doesn't matter if the seats are leather. All that matters is that the engine turns and the pilot knows where he's going. He looked down at Arthur. You know where you're going now? You stopped looking in the mirror. With that, he disappeared into the cockpit. Arthur stood alone on the tarmac. The sound of the jet's auxiliary power unit started up a low, steady whine. The ground crew began to pull the chocks away from the wheels. They gave Arthur the thumbs up. He walked over to the edge of the tarmac, giving the plane space. He watched as the massive jet began to move. It taxied slowly, deliberately. It didn't look flashy in the morning light. It looked strong. It looked like a machine that had a job to do. The jet turned onto the main runway and paused. The engine spooled up, the sound growing to a roar that vibrated in Arthur's chest. He watched the silver bird accelerate. It lifted off the ground effortlessly, climbing fast and true. In seconds, it was just a speck in the sky, heading east. Toward the work that needed to be done, Arthur stood there for a long time after the plane was gone. The sun was fully up now, warming his face. He looked down at his boots. They were dirty. They were scuffed. But they felt good. He felt grounded. He turned and walked back toward the hangar. He saw the other sales reps arriving for work, dressed in their crisp suits, holding their coffees. They were laughing, talking about the weekend, rushing toward their desks to make their calls. Arthur walked past them. He didn't stop to chat. He didn't care about their sales numbers. He had a paving contract to finalize. He had a logistics schedule to manage. He had real work to do. For the first time in his life, Arthur didn't feel like he was acting. He didn't feel like he was wearing a costume. He felt like the man in the mud. He felt like he was finally part of the real world. And it felt better than closing any deal he had ever made. Asterisk 2 weeks passed. And the silence in the showroom was different now. Before it had been a waiting silence. A silence filled with the ticking of clocks and the shuffling of brochures. Now, it was a working silence. Arthur was rarely at his desk. He was usually out on the tarmac, or on the phone, or in his office with the door closed. Looking over spreadsheets that had nothing to do with luxury interiors, he had sold his Italian suits. He hadn't done it dramatically, throwing them in a trash can. He just took them to a high-end resale shop and used the money to buy a wardrobe of sturdy trousers, Oxford shirts, and thick jackets. He kept the boots. They were broken in now. They carried the scuffs of the tarmac. The other sales reps noticed the change, but they didn't understand it. They whispered behind his back. They said he had cracked under the pressure. They said the Thomas deal had broken him because he didn't get a big enough commission. They laughed when they saw him eating a sandwich at his desk instead of going to the bistro for lunch. Arthur didn't care. He was coordinating the paving of the runway at Blue Sky Charters. He was talking to Linda every day, working out the logistics for the fuel trucks. It was complicated, difficult work. It involved permits, weather delays, and grumpy contractors. It was the kind of work that used to give him a headache. Now, it gave him a sense of purpose. Then came the Thursday afternoon that shattered the quiet. The glass doors to the showroom didn't slide open. They were kicked open. The regional manager, a man named Mr. Vance, stormed in. He was red-faced, veins bulging in his neck. He held a stack of papers in his hand, waving them like a weapon.
Arthur,
Vance shouted. His voice echoed off the marble floors. My office. Now. The other sales reps froze. They pretended to be busy on the phone, but their eyes were wide, watching the drama. Arthur stood up slowly. He felt a calm settling over him. He had been expecting this. He walked toward the back, his boots thumping steadily on the floor. He followed Vance into the glass-walled office at the end of the hall. Vance slammed the door shut and threw the papers onto his desk. They slid across the mahogany and spilled onto the floor. Care to explain this? Vance demanded, pointing a shaking finger at the mess. Arthur bent down and picked up the papers. He looked at them. They were invoices. Invoices for the runway paving. Invoices for the new seats. Invoices for the maintenance contracts with Blue Sky Charters. These are the logistics invoices for the Thomas account, Arthur said calmly. Logistics, Vance roared. Logistics. You authorized $50,000 to pave a dirt strip for a crop duster service. You bought industrial seats for a global $7,500. You turned a luxury showroom into a garage? Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved the account, Arthur said. He placed the papers neatly on the edge of the desk, saved it. Vance laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You ruined it. I just got off the phone with Mr. Thomas's lawyers. They sent the final payment. They accepted the delivery. But they also sent a note. A personal note. Do you know what it says? Arthur didn't answer. He just stood there, his hands clasped behind his back, says Vance read from his tablet, his voice trembling with rage. I will not be requiring any further services from Elite Aviation at this time. Vance looked up, his eyes blazing. You cost us a lifelong client, Arthur. He was a whale. He could have bought a new jet every year for the rest of his life. He could have filled our hangars. And you chased him away with your dirt and your cheap seats. You are fired. Do you hear me? You are done. Get out of my building. Arthur didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just nodded his head once. Okay, he said. Okay? Vance screamed. That's it? You don't have anything to say for yourself? I did what the client asked, Arthur said softly. I didn't chase him away, sir. I let him go. Get out. Vance shouted, pointing to the door. Arthur turned and walked out of the office. He walked through the showroom. The other reps were watching now, openly staring. They saw the look on Vance's face, and they saw the calm look on Arthur's. Arthur walked past them without making eye contact. He went to his desk, picked up his small box of personal items, an old photo of his mother, a mug that said "World's Best Salesman," which he now found ironic, and the crumpled business card of Mr. Thomas that he kept in his wallet. He walked out of the building and into the cool afternoon air. He sat on a bench near the parking lot and took a deep breath. He didn't feel panic. He felt free. He pulled out his phone. He had one voicemail. He clicked play. "Arthur, it's Linda. Hey, listen, the paving crew just finished. It looks beautiful. It's smooth as glass. And listen, I don't know how you did it, but I just got a call from the Thomas Foundation. They want to hire us exclusively for all their transport work in the region. It's a huge contract. I mean, huge. I can hire 2 more pilots. I can buy a new engine, Arthur. Are you there? Call me back." Arthur smiled. He deleted the message. He sat there for another hour, watching the planes take off. He saw the big white jets climbing into the sky, but he also saw the smaller propeller planes taking off from blue sky in the distance. They were rougher, noisier, but they were flying. His phone buzzed again. It was an email alert. He opened it. It was from a law firm he didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Employment Opportunity." Arthur frowned and opened it. It was short and to the point. Asterisk, "Dear Arthur. Asterisk, asterisk, Mr. Thomas has asked us to forward this offer to you immediately upon your departure from Elite Aviation. He requires a director of operations for his new global logistics hub. The job involves managing a fleet of aircraft, coordinating ground transport, and ensuring that the work gets done regardless of the weather or the terrain. Asterisk, asterisk, the salary is triple what you were making. The office is on the tarmac, not in a showroom. You will be required to wear boots. Please let us know if you are interested. Sincerely." Asterisk, asterisk, the partners asterisk. Arthur read the email 3 times. He looked down at his boots. They were dusty. They weren't shiny. They were made for walking. He stood up from the bench. He looked back at the Elite Aviation building. It was tall and gleaming, a monument to people who looked good but didn't do much. He looked at the horizon, where the sky was turning purple and orange as the sun began to set. He wasn't a salesman anymore. He wasn't a suit in a box. He was a man who helped people fly. He was a man who paved runways. Arthur typed a reply on his phone with his thumbs. Asterisk, "I'm interested. I'll start Monday." Asterisk, he hit send. He put his phone in his pocket, turned his back on the showroom, and walked toward his car. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing a commission. He was chasing the sunset, and the pace felt just right.